Some land remembers who worked it. Not in a sentimental way, in a practical one. The soil holds the shape of old furrows long after the tractor is gone. This story takes place in western Kentucky, in the last week of October, when the soybean fields go pale gold and the air smells like diesel and turned earth and something colder underneath. Something that says winter is already making its plans. The leaves on the oaks were coming down in handfuls that week. The kind of week that feels like a countdown. Elmer Goode was 67 years old. He had hands that looked like they'd been carved from the same wood as his fence posts. Elmer had been farming the same 340 acres outside of Morganfield since he was 19 years old. Not because inheritance was kind, but because stubbornness was. His father, Roy, had worked the property before him, though Roy's version of it was smaller, hungrier, and about 40% more likely to flood. Elmer spent 12 years fixing the drainage on the south field alone. He did it himself, mostly. A Kubota L3901 and a lot of evenings he could have spent elsewhere. The farmhouse was built in 1949. White clapboard siding, one porch that leaned slightly east, a kitchen window that faced the tree line so you could watch the deer come out at dusk if you had a reason to stand still that long. Elmer had 3 children. 2 had left for Louisville and Lexington respectively, which he understood. 1, his daughter May, still came home for the harvest, and sometimes for no reason at all, which he was grateful for in a way he never quite said out loud. He grew soybeans primarily, some corn, and kept a small herd of black Angus, 14 head, that had cost him $800 in vet bills alone the previous spring when a respiratory illness moved through them quietly before he caught it. What Elmer carried was this. His wife, Carol, had died in the spring of 2019, after 41 years of marriage. And when she went, so did the person who had kept the books. Elmer had never been afraid of hard work. He was somewhat afraid of spreadsheets. He fell behind, not drastically, not recklessly, but behind, quietly, and then a little more. He owed $214,000 to Horizon Community Bank on an operating loan he'd carried and serviced faithfully for 11 years. He had missed 2 payments. The total arrears were $6,400. The man from the bank was named Derek Sowell. He was 34 years old, wore a Carhartt jacket that was clean in a way that suggested it had never been worn in the cold, and he drove a gray Ford Edge that did not have a scratch on it. He was not a bad man. He was a man with a checklist and a Tuesday afternoon slot and a performance review in January. He came to the property on October 22nd. He shook Elmer's hand with the firm courtesy of someone who has been trained to shake hands firmly. He explained that the bank had initiated a review of the loan given the arrears, and that under the terms of the note, they were within their rights to begin formal proceedings if a resolution was not reached within 30 days. Elmer nodded. He had read the note. He said, "You might want to hold off on that. There's something going on with the east parcel that'll change what this land is worth." Either direction. Derek Sowell wrote something on his clipboard. He said, "I understand your concern, Mr. Goode, and I want you to know we'll take everything into consideration." He said it the way people say things they do not intend to follow up on. He drove away with the gravel still settling. Elmer stood on the porch for a moment in the October cold. He went inside and put the kettle on. If you've ever said something true to someone with a clipboard and watched them write it down with the expression of a person who has already decided, stay with me. This one's about that feeling and what happens when the quiet ones turn out to be right. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Stories like Elmer's are the reason I started making these, and I want to keep finding them. And drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know if you've got a Morganfield of your own. Somewhere you've been driving past your whole life and almost stopped. Alright, let's go back to October. Nobody was watching when Elmer started. The morning after Derek Sowell's visit, he was up before 5. Not because he was anxious. He had been up before 5 most mornings of his adult life. He pulled on his Carhartt, the real kind, the brown one with the sleeve that had been repaired twice with iron-on patches, and he walked out to the east parcel with a flashlight and a yellow legal pad. The east parcel had been the low-producing corner of the farm for as long as Elmer could remember. 48 acres of slightly elevated ground on the western edge, dropping into a creek drainage that occasionally gave him problems. It had never been his best ground. But 3 months earlier, in late July, he had noticed something while running the combine. The equipment was pulling toward the northeast edge of that parcel in a way he couldn't explain. Not dramatically, subtly, the way a current pulls. He had written it down. July 14th. East field, northeast corner, 60-foot section. Combine tracking northeast. Check. He had not checked yet. August had come in hard and hot, and then September had taken everything he had, and then Carol's sister had visited, and then the letters from the bank had started arriving. Now he checked. He spent 4 mornings on that northeast corner with a soil probe. He was using a 36-inch Oakfield tube sampler, the same one he'd had since 1998, and he was pulling cores every 20 feet in a grid pattern and laying them on the tailgate of his F-250. He was looking at color and consistency and smell, all three, always, and he was writing everything down on the legal pad. What he found was this. Approximately 11 acres of that northeast section had a different soil profile entirely. Darker, denser, with a clay loam composition that should not have been there given the topography. On the 3rd morning, he pulled a core at the far edge and found something in it he had not expected. A faint iridescence in the clay, a certain heaviness. He sent a sample to the University of Kentucky Extension office. He paid $47 for the analysis. Then he called a man named Curtis Prater in Paducah who had spent 20 years as an industrial land assessor before he retired. Curtis came out on a Saturday. He spent 3 hours on that northeast corner. He did not say much. He left with 2 jars of soil in a cardboard box in his truck. He called Elmer 11 days later and said, "You need to sit down, Elmer, not because it's bad, but because it's interesting." The meeting at Horizon Community Bank happened on November 14th. Elmer had requested it through their formal process. He wore his good flannel. He brought the legal pad, a manila envelope, and a 2-page summary that Curtis Prater had written on his retired assessor letterhead. The meeting was attended by Derek Sowell and by the bank's regional loan officer, a woman named Patricia Kane. She was professional and measured, and had the look of someone who had seen many farmers in many chairs across from her. She had a leather portfolio and a printed copy of Elmer's loan history. Elmer put Curtis Prater's summary on the table. He did not explain it first. He let them read. The northeast 11 acres of Elmer's east parcel sat atop a formation of Fuller's earth, a naturally occurring calcium-rich clay mineral used commercially in industrial filtration, cat litter manufacturing, drilling fluid applications, and a range of agricultural soil amendment products. The deposit, as best as Curtis could estimate from the surface sampling, ran roughly 15 to 20 feet deep across the entire 11-acre section. Commercial extraction value, at current market rates, was estimated between $380,000 and $490,000. Elmer's total outstanding debt to Horizon Community Bank was $214,000. Patricia Kane read the summary twice. She looked up. She looked back down. There was a silence in that conference room that lasted somewhere around 12 seconds. Derek Sowell cleared his throat. Elmer did not say, "I told you so." He did not say anything at all for that part. He just waited, the way a man who has farmed the same ground for 46 years has learned to wait, with patience that has no performance in it. Patricia Kane said, "Mr. Goode, we should probably talk about restructuring your loan terms." Elmer said, "I figured we probably should." The formal extraction rights agreement was signed in February, 3 months after that meeting. A company out of Nashville called Meridian Mineral Resources signed a 15-year lease on the 11 acres for a guaranteed annual payment of $31,000, plus royalties based on volume. In the first year alone, Elmer received $44,200. His loan was restructured. His arrears, the $6,400 that had started all of this, were absorbed into the new terms without penalty. Patricia Kane, to her credit, handled it without fanfare. Word spread the way things spread in small towns. Not on social media, not in a newspaper, but in the parking lot of the co-op in Morganfield and across a few fences in November and December. Farmers in that county started looking at their low-producing corners differently. 2 of them called the UK Extension Office within 6 months for soil testing. Elmer did not become a local legend. He became, if anything, slightly quieter. He still got up before 5. He still ran the Kubota when the ground was right. He called May on Sundays, and sometimes she drove down on a Saturday, and they would walk the east field together in the afternoon light, and he would point things out to her. Not the mineral deposit, mostly, but the way the soil changed color near the creek, the way the red-tailed hawks circled the drainage in winter, the way 46 years of watching the same ground taught you things that could not be written in a report. He kept the yellow legal pad on his kitchen table. He had started a new one. There is a particular kind of knowledge that does not announce itself. It builds in the body over decades, in the knees when they bend to check a furrow, in the hands when they lift a core sample, in the eyes that have read the same field across 10,000 mornings. It does not come with credentials. It does not carry a clipboard. The banks and the assessors and the experts with their formatted reports are not wrong. Exactly. They know what they know. But they know it about everywhere, which means sometimes they know it about nowhere in particular. Elmer Goode knew one piece of ground. 48 specific acres, 46 specific years, one iridescent seam of clay at the end of a $47 soil test. He had said something true on a porch in October to a man who wrote it down and drove away. He had not argued. He had gone inside, put the kettle on, and eventually picked up the Oakfield probe. The land remembered who worked it. It had been waiting to say so.